Lesson 69 is about factoring trinomials. Remember that factoring is the process when we put an expression as a multiplication or the product of two factors. And a trinomial is something like this, where we have three different terms that are in a mathematical expression. So what are we going to do when we have to factor? Well, what we have to do is look for two factors of negative 15. So I'm going to do them here so that you see clearly what we're doing. So negative 1 times 15 is negative 15. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Negative 5 times 3 is negative 15. And negative 15 times 1 is negative 15. And then these are all the options I have. There's nothing else. Now we have to look for negative 14. So which of these options, which of these four options, if I add them, I get negative 14. And the only one is this one here, because negative 15 plus 1 is negative 14. So notice how easy. We're just going to put the x here at the beginning, because x times x equals x squared, and then the negative 15 times the positive 1. Now you can always check your answer. In this case, if I multiply negative 15 times positive 1, it gives me negative 15, so that's correct. And negative 15 plus 1 gives me negative 14, so that is also correct. And that is the factorization. I want you to notice that the signs in this case are different. We have a positive and a negative because of the negative here. When we have a negative on that last term, we have to choose a positive and a negative. And notice that this negative is the one that tells us the sign of the biggest number. Since we need a negative 14 result, we need 15 to be the negative so that whenever we add, we have negative 14 left over. Let's look at another example. The first thing we have to do is make sure that the trinomial is in order. And in this case, it is. We look at the exponents of the x. Notice how we start with x squared, x1, and then here we have x to the 0, but we don't put it. So now that we have it in order, we're going to look for the factors of c, the last one there, which is negative 10. So I have negative 1 times 10, negative 2 times 5, negative 5 times 2, and negative 10 times 1. Again, notice it's not an infinite amount of options. We just have 4 pairs to look at. And which one of these pairs, if I add them, I get positive 3? Well, if I add negative 1 plus 10, I get positive 9. If I add negative 2 plus 5, the answer is 3, and those would be the numbers I want to use. So again, I open my two parentheses, I put the x and the x to get the x squared, and then I put the plus 5 and the minus 2. Again, notice you can check your answers. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10, and 5 minus 2 is 3, so we got the right factorization. Remember that if you multiply these two, you will end up getting this trinomial. That's the point of this exercise. So we are writing the trinomial as the product of two factors. In this third example, notice that the terms are not in order. So we rewrite, putting them in order, looking at the exponent. So we have x squared minus 5x1 plus 6x0. So we put it like that. And again, the one we want to look at is the 6. Notice that in this case it's positive 6. So I have two options. To have both positive, because positive times positive is positive, and to have two negatives, because negative times negative is also positive. So negative 1 times negative 6, negative 2 times negative 3, and then we go back to negative 3, negative 2, and negative 6 and negative 1. We don't obviously need to put these because they're the same as the ones on the top. So what are the additions if I So what are the results if I add these numbers? Well, -1 plus -6 is -7, and -2 and -3 is -5. So the pair that works is -2 and -3. Again, notice how in this case both factors have negative numbers because we have a positive there and we want negatives. So we need two signs of the same type, and in this case the type we want is negative because of the -5. In this other example, we also have to reorganize, so I'm gonna rewrite here x squared plus 6x plus 5, and then we're going to get the factors of 5. And again, in this case, since it's positive, we want both of the same. So it's either 1 times 5 or -1 times -5. Okay, notice that those are the only two options because 5 doesn't have any more factors. It's a prime number. And so we want to look at the one in the center. Since we want 6, we need to use positive. We need to use this one. 1 plus 5 is 6. And 1 minus 5 is -6. So we want the first one, the one on the top. And so our factorization is going to be x plus 5 times x plus 1. And that's the lesson. Very, very simple. We're going to be learning more and more different ways of factorizing. So it's important that you get this one down. So if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.